Are you lost in the chaotic whirlwind of day-to-day busyness? Do you yearn for a deeper sense of meaning and purpose in your life? Welcome to Be You, Your Story, Your Purpose, the podcast dedicated to empowering women on their journey of self-discovery and finding their true purpose through their own story. I'm your host, Brenda Simmons. Welcome, my friends, to the podcast. I'm so glad that you are joining me today. I was watching a documentary the other day about the history of dogs, basically how they were domesticated and how they have grown into so many different varieties of dogs. And it was so interesting because the commenter said something that really struck me. He said, the history of dogs is all about the survival of the friendliest, not survival of the fittest. And those who learn to work together to forge relationships learn how to then survive together better. And so I thought, wow, that's so interesting that you can look at that in the history of dogs, but isn't it true for humans as well? We are social beings, and it is so important for us to develop these relationships. And when we can work together to solve problems or to overcome different issues that we might have, we survive better. The key then is to really understanding how to use our communities for our own maximum benefit. And I mean that personally as well as within the community itself. So, what are we doing to maximize our existence through our communities? Let's take a deeper dive into this. And first, let's talk about, okay, what are communities? Well, there's basically three different types of communities. The first one is the soul community. This is the relationship that you have with yourself and your higher being. The second one is your inner community. Now, this is the small group of people, and it could be bigger. Everybody's a little bit different. These are your closest relationships. They might be people who are in your family. They may not. They might be people who are just super close friends, and they may not. So these are the ones that you go to for support and the ones who love you no matter what happens. And these are the people who you turn to for your help and you confide in them, knowing that that confidence will be kept sacred. So that is your inner community. Your extended community, these are your acquaintances. Maybe they're lesser friends, and I don't mean lesser in a derogatory way, but meaning you're not as close to them. These are the general populations, the people that you come into contact on a daily basis. So you will notice when you really look at this that there's something interesting that goes on. The further away you get from yourself, the more fluid those relationships become. What do I mean by that? Well, it means that like you take your inner community, right? Yourself, right? You are never going to be disengaged from yourself. That well, because you are one unit, right? And so that is static, right? You move into your inner community. And these are people, sometimes you'll have friends for a season, sometimes you will have friends for eternity. There's a little bit more fluidity to who those relationships are and if they are a part of your inner community or not. And then you get to your extended community, and this is really, really fluid. Like people come in and out all the time. And, it might be, the people that you hang out with in your gym class or the church congregation, or, it could even be the person that you are in line with at the grocery store and you strike up a conversation, right? All of these people these are different examples of people who are in your extended community. Your extended community, they're not always there, right? So that it changes constantly who is a part of that extended community. Our interactions with each one of these communities is actually really vital to our own personal development and our own well-being. And I want to take a deeper dive into that. And before I do that, I want to talk about the rules of engagement, because I think there's different ways that you can approach your different communities. There's a way that is harmful and can be potentially damaging, not only to you, but to those around you. Or there is a way to engage with your communities that is uplifting, that progresses you forward and helps you to overcome life in general, right? So There are some rules of engagement, and abiding by these rules of engagement allows us to trust in ourselves, allows us to trust in other people. It helps us to solve problems, and it helps us to develop deep and lasting relationships. And it reminds me of, I was listening to, I think I was just like a TikTok or something like that, and there was a research that said, do you know what the first sign of community was? Like they're looking at, it was like an archaeologist, I think is the word. So, and this archaeologist said it was a healed, broken femur. So a femur bone that had been broken, that had been healed. And they said that is the first sign of true community because that femur bone is such a vital part of the human body that they if before community, you didn't have anybody to take care of you. If you had a bone that large that was broken, you just passed away. And so showing that this femur was healed meant that there were other people there to take care of that person who had that broken bone. So this is what we mean by survival of the friendliest. Those who work together will survive longer. The first rule is you have to approach these communities in a space of in this creator space, right? In a space where you are vision driven, where you are kind hearted. And again, remember how I was talking about how there's different ways of approaching this. If you really want to maximize your ability to, well, if you really want to maximize what your community can do for you and what you can do for your community, you really have to engage with that community within that creator space, right? Rule number 2 is to be genuine and authentic. Now, this doesn't mean that you always have to be like happy and have it all together because goodness knows, like none of us always have it together. Like that's just part of the human experience. But this means that there's no games, there's no pretending, there's no hiding, there's no exaggeration, no comparing, right? You want to be who you are. What you see is what you get. So when you can approach all three of these different communities in that way, then you will be able to maximize the effect that they can have on you. And then the third rule is to avoid drama. Now, this means that there's no rescuing either by giving it or receiving it. And one of the biggest clues of this is excuses. Are you excusing other people's behavior or are you excusing your own behavior? And if you're doing that, that is rescuing and that is not going to benefit you or the other people within your community. Also, part of avoiding drama is no mocking, no teasing. And really, you have to think about the goal is to have the interaction be one of progress, right? You want to be able to communicate and be around other people and have it benefit not just you, but everyone else around you. So those are the 3 rules. I'll say them again. Approach all of the communities within the creator space. Be genuine and authentic and avoid drama. So what happens if we don't do that? Then we actually can damage our communities. All 3 of them, that inner or that soul, the inner and the extended. We can damage those communities. And when we damage those communities, we actually damage ourselves the very most. And so it's super important to maintain that good relationship with all 3 of those communities using those rules of engagement. So let's explore a little bit deeper how to use each community to get the maximum benefit. And I'm going to include, why we avoid some of them, some of the pitfalls, and even some of the benefits of engagement within each of these communities. All right, so let's go back to the soul community. When you are taking time to develop this relationship with yourself, with your higher power, this is time by yourself, time with your higher power. It's, any relationship takes time, and that includes the relationship that you have with yourself and your higher power. When you are doing or when you are communicating and spending time with yourself and with your higher power, seek who you are, what your purpose is, and how you should behave at any given moment. You're going to look for how you can solve problems, allow for those downloads to come, those moments of inspiration. I really like to do this in the mornings. It's my favorite time. And I love getting up before everybody else does. It's just so quiet and so peaceful. And I find that I get the most inspiration in those quiet moments. I also like to spend some alone time in the car. I mean, I spend so much time in the car, and it's such a fantastic time to be able to just talk out loud and to really work out things that I'm wrestling with inside of my brain. And I also like doing this out in nature. So these are three different places that really speak to me. And your places might be someplace different, but the key is to find that time, whether it's in the morning, afternoon, or an evening, but find that time to spend time with yourself and to really discover, who you are and, process things that have happened to you. Look at your thoughts, where those are at, and where are emotions at and why. And it's just absolutely beautiful. I think sometimes we avoid this time with our soul community, with ourselves and our higher power, because sometimes we behave in ways that are incongruent with our values and our identity. And or maybe we have faced some trauma that, or we've had experienced some trauma that we're not ready to face yet. Sometimes we're not in a place where we want to be alone with our thoughts, and there might even be some shaming and some self-loathing that's going on internally. And so we tend to avoid it because it means you have to face what's coming, and face all of these things, and even face change, knowing that you may need to deal with things a little bit differently. And this can be scary, it can be overwhelming, and it can be unpleasant, honestly. However, it is absolutely amazing when you continue doing that and you just stick with it. I have learned that no matter what you're experiencing, healing comes first from the inside. I was listening to this memoir. It's called The Girl Who Fell from the Sky, and the author is Emma Carey. So she was on a parachute. Well, she was on I think it was like a study abroad out in Europe, and she was going to all of these different places. And one of the activities that she was doing was skydiving in Switzerland. And it was a cloudy day, and her instructor had strapped her on, and they jumped out. Well, he deployed the parachute at the exact second that the secondary parachute deployed. And so the two parachutes got tangled up, and so they fell all the way to the ground. Miraculously, they both survived. Like nobody knows how they survived. So both of them end up in a hospital in Switzerland, and she tried to contact this instructor, just to see how he was doing and all this stuff. And I mean, she's paralyzed, right? And she's having her own physical struggles. And she was getting ready to leave. She was from Australia, so she was getting ready to leave to go back home to Australia. And this instructor wheeled in. He was paralyzed also. His was from the waist down. Hers was a little bit higher up because he landed on top of her. And he said one thing to her, and he told her, you have to heal yourself inside before you can heal yourself outside. And then he wheeled out. That was the only thing he said to her, nothing else. And so she took that advice and really mulled over it. She had several years of healing. And she did indeed say how important it was for her to understand what was going on internally so that she could, and heal internally, heal the anger and the resentment and the self-doubt and all of those things going on inside of her before she could truly be whole enough to then extend that to her physical world. Obviously, she's working at them at the same time, but it was so interesting to me much of a how much more powerful she was in sticking to her health regimen just because she was whole on the inside. That doesn't mean that you're not going to have difficult days, of course not. However, it does mean that you're in a better place and that healing comes quicker when you have those down days. So heal from within first. And as you do that, then you will be able to extend that healing to your external world. So maybe your body, but also to other relationships around you. So that includes all of that. I find that when I give space to myself, then I am able to give space to other people. And it's because I've taken that time to work on the inside of me that I am able to be more patient and more giving and more caring and more compassionate with other people because I'm compassionate with myself. I've learned that first with myself, and then I can extend that to other people. Something else to think about too, and I know I've thought about this so many times. Many times that which irritates you in other people is the very same thing that you are irritated about yourself. And I've had to really be brutally honest with myself and go, why is it that this person bothers me so much? And I will pinpoint the exact things. And sure enough, those are the things that I get really irritated about myself. And I'm seeing that in somebody else, and it just is triggering, right? And so as we heal ourselves internally, we're able to remove these irritants about ourselves, and that actually will remove it about other people too. Again, it's all part of that being compassionate and caring towards other people because we are compassionate and caring with ourselves. So that is the soul community. Let's look at the inner community. So what this looks like is having people that are close to you that you can share your vision with, share your goals with, share your dreams with, and even share your struggles with, your worries, your frustrations, your failures, and all of the good and all the bad. And what's vital about this is there is a give and take that happens. If you're always the one giving and there's no receiving, there's no taking, then it's off balance. And you need to really look at, is that relationship a healthy relationship, and should that person be part of your inner community? That needs to be equal. You've got to have both sharing and receiving as well. So give space for these relationships to grow, to thrive in authenticity. And what's interesting is they don't have to be a lot of people. There are some people who have a huge inner community and others that maybe just have one or two people, and both are good. Both work. As long as it works for you, then that's what it should look like. And I think what's really important though to be cognizant of those people that you accept into your inner circle. You want to make sure that these are going to be the people who are going to be genuine. There's nothing more damaging to an inner circle than an ingenuous person. And I think we've all experienced this where we thought somebody was going to be just your best friend and they ended up not being that kind of a person. This happened to my daughter in high school, and it was so devastating. So devastating to her. And it took her a really long time to heal, and it had a lot of lasting effects to it. And so be very, very careful who you allow into your inner circle. You want them to be those people that you can trust. And boundaries here are really super important. A lot of people think that boundaries are to keep people out, but they're not. Boundaries are to keep the right people in. That's what they're there for. And so we allow those boundaries to help us to know who those right people are. The benefits of your inner circle are so amazing. So it allows us to get feedback on how we need to make corrections. Now, these are the people who they're going to say, hey, I really think you need to look at this. You might be approaching the situation wrong, or even I've had people in my inner circle call me out on things and go, why are you behaving this way? That was totally wrong. And it's so awkward, but at the same time, I so appreciate it. I appreciate it when people trust me enough to have a difficult conversation. And I know that it's for my good. And that's the thing, your inner circle, those are the people who are going to have these difficult conversations with you in the spirit of love because they love you and they want the best for you. So another benefit of having this inner circle and really engaging with it is a lot of times it will give us good examples of people that we can aspire to be like. They can be lifelong companions. They can even help you uphold your standards. Now, this I have a personal experience with because when I was in high school, I had the best friends. Like they were just absolutely amazing. And I grew up in a very religious home, and there were standards that I had committed to keeping that my friends, they didn't have the same commitments. And that was fine. Didn't bother me that they had different values. we were able to be friends on a level that was so much fun and just so engaging. And what was interesting though was they helped me because I set out these standards of this is how I want to live my life. They helped me to stick to those standards. And so they would make sure that if they were going to do something that wasn't part of my own values, that they would just do it on a different night. And I didn't feel excluded because I understood that they were doing it out of love and out of respect. And even if I started to veer off course a little bit, they would correct me. And it was so fascinating to me that even though they didn't have the same standards that I did, they respected me and loved me enough to uphold my standards for me so that I could be strong too. Like they were absolutely amazing. And I will always love my high school friends because of that. So your inner community is super vital. Like it is, these are the people that you go to and love you and will help you to be the best version of you, even if that includes some difficult conversations. The last one is our extended community. So this I like to look at this as how are you showing up in the world? What's your vibe? What's your energy? Like you wake up in the morning grumpy all the time and then you just start your day grumpy and everybody you talk to is, you're just grumpy and upset and that affects how people interact with you and it could be again the person next to you in line at the grocery store. What is that energy that you are giving off? Or are you interacting in a way that is welcoming and really beneficial? Remember those rules of engagement. If we engage with our extended community in using those three rules of engagement, our experience with just humanity at large is going to be so much better. And we, it's so, I don't know, it's just so interesting to me how when you smile at somebody, how that totally can change their whole demeanor. And sometimes I like to just experiment with that and just go, I wonder if I can, make this person's day a little bit better. And like where I work, there's this gentleman there who cleans every Tuesdays and Thursdays, and he's the nicest guy, and you can tell that there's some mental handicaps there. And so I decided, well, I'm going to at least learn his name so that I can say hello to him by name. And so I asked him that one day, hey, what's your name? And he told me, and I told him my name. And every time he's there, he gets this big smile on his face and he tells me hello and I say hello back. And it's something that's so simple, just knowing somebody's name, and yet it makes such a huge impact, and it's where sometimes I felt like there was like this little awkward vibe there. It's just friendly and it's open and welcoming. And it's just a really beautiful experience every time I see this individual. So there are some potential pitfalls that we can fall into with the extended community. We can judge people unjustly just based off of first impressions. We can assume that we know who they are when really we don't have any idea because remember we just don't know them, right? And we can even dismiss people by thinking that they are inconsequential. There was one time my husband and we were driving our little family to Arizona for Christmas, and things were financially pretty difficult. In fact, we had been given some money to be able to make this trip to Arizona. And so we're in Holbrook, Arizona, going down through the White Mountains to get to the Phoenix area. And there is this man, we were stopped at McDonald's to get some, I think it was like late afternoon. So just to get some food because we were all hungry. And there was this man there sitting outside of the McDonald's and he was sitting, we were kind of sitting inside and we were just kind of watching and my husband tells the story. He had this wrestle inside and he felt like he needed to buy this man some dinner. And the wrestle was, we don't have that much money. Like we've got enough to get there and back. And if I spend money on this man, then we're not, that affects our ability to feed ourselves too, And so this wrestle went on. And he felt like he heard this voice that said, you need to buy this man dinner because you are the only one that sees him. And it struck him, and he looked around and he said, yeah, nobody sees this man. Everybody's just walking right by him, and they're not even looking at him. They're not giving him any the time of day, nothing. Like he was invisible. And so I remember my husband turning to my son and he said, I want you to go and ask that man what he wants to eat, and we're going to buy him something. And so my son went up to him and said, hey, we want to buy you dinner. What would you like? And he was so grateful, so grateful. And we bought him some dinner, and it was a really poignant experience for our entire family because we were able to teach our kids, we need to see other people. And just because somebody is in down on their luck doesn't mean that they are not important. And um, it was interesting. My husband was telling me this story again the other day, and I thought, how important is it to see people, even in your extended community, to just truly see them. So it is a pitfall that we fall into when we just don't see people. We don't understand. I mean, we may not ever understand, but to actually see somebody is really, really, really powerful. Benefits from using that extended community correctly. Sometimes I think there is safety in your extended community because there are times when, like, have you ever been in a class and if you know somebody in that class, like you don't want to say, be as vulnerable, like if they're not part of your inner circle, but they're close enough to you that, you might feel some judgment if you were to share things, right? Sometimes there is safety in knowing that nobody else knows you. And so you are able to be a little bit more vocal and a little bit more vulnerable, and they can help you understand things that you may not otherwise have understood because you had that safety of other people not knowing who you are. I think it's also really, really important that sometimes there's those people that come into your life for just a brief moment and they say something to you that is like, what? Like I never ever thought about that. I've been, just in passing with people, and they'll say something and I'm like, oh, I never thought about it that way. So I think again, approaching this community within the bounds of those 3 rules of engagement is so powerful. And it really can help us to gain a better sense of where we connect, where are we in the world of our community, and how do we show up in our own lives, and how does that affect, each one of these communities? It's so important. What's interesting is we tend to gravitate towards one of these communities the most. Like for me, not the inner, but the soul community. Like I love spending time, just analyzing myself and making sure I'm healing and, progressing. And sometimes I forget to engage as much as I should with my inner community and my extended community. In fact, I've had, homework assignments where I was supposed to reach out to each one, and man, it's a struggle. It's a struggle sometimes to do what you're not comfortable with doing. And it is also super important that we make the effort because we can't do everything alone. Remember, it's survival of the friendliest, not survival of the fittest. How are we engaging with each one of these communities? Because each one brings a benefit to us that can't be received any other way in any other community. So I want you to think about that. What is your go-to community? What do you feel when you reach outside of that community? And how do you show up? Then when you do show up, how do you show up in each one of those communities? And how can you be better at showing up? And I know for me, I always have work in this. I'm always thinking, oh, we need to like get together with other people and reach out to more. And it takes an effort that sometimes I'm not always up to. And yet I know that it's important to do. And I am always grateful when I do make that effort in each one of those communities. So I hope that you guys are able to take what I've talked about here and really look at how are you engaging with each one of your communities? What is it doing in your life? And how can you be a little bit better at it? And I hope you know that as you do, you will learn a lot more about yourself. You will learn a lot more of how you can be more successful in your life and how to really have those strong relationships. And with that, I hope you know that your purpose is in your story. Until next time, take care.
Celebrate your dreams, let them take flight, for you are a star, shining bright in every step you take. Let your